Hello. For a change, I'm doing this one in the living room as it's a nice sunny day. YouTube seems to be awash with people, record collectors doing a vinyl tag over the last few days, and I sort of watched one or two of them. And basically, it's if you haven't seen any of these, it's basically 20 questions set, and show a record or talk about a record associated with them. And I've seen it. I'm not sure whether there's one standard set, but there does seem to be one which is more common than any of the others. And I think it was set by a guy called Rob Walker in Manchester, and there are loads of those. So I've used his. There's one question in there which I can't, doesn't apply to me, so actually I've taken a more interesting question from one I saw that Noble Records Dylan did. He did a slightly different version of it, and so I'm swapping out one question for that. So the idea is, as I say, it was a bit of fun, 20 questions, and pick a record associated with it. So I've got my list. I'm going to try and whiz through. I'm not going to talk much about each record. As far as possible, I've tried to avoid the most obvious. Sometimes there isn't one because it's a fairly black and white question. But where there's been a choice, I've tried to avoid going for the most obvious. So I hope you enjoy it. Here we go then. So number one question is favourite new release of 2022. Now, I did my 24 countdown sort of advent calendar style-y thing before Christmas. So if you watched any of those, you'll know what the top two are. But I've got to pick one of those. So no surprise to anyone who saw that. I'm going with The Smile, A Light for Attracting Attention. And no, I'm not going to say AKA Radiohead, just because I don't want to annoy people right at the beginning. So that's the first one. And bizarrely, my second choice is also my equal number one, because the question is the last band or solo artist you saw live. And that actually was Porcupine Tree. So that was my sort of almost equal number one. So I could have done that as a double up, but there you go. Number three. Their first album was the best. This actually was harder than I thought, because when you go back through all the great bands, there aren't that many. I couldn't really think of any which I thought, no, that's definitely the best one. So my response to this, and this is an album I could double up with a question later, but I'm not going to. My best of, I think their first was their best, is, let's see if I can work out how to pronounce it. Yes, it's pronounced Leonard Skinnerd. So Leonard Skinnerd, pronounced Leonard Skinnerd. Freebird, and magnificent album. Hat trick, show the vinyl, CD and cassette of an album. Now I can't do that because I don't own a single cassette. I don't get it. Sorry. Cassettes were all right for home recording back in the day, but I'm not going to do them now. I think I only ever bought 2 pre-recorded ones for the car once, and they're long gone. So I don't have them. So I'm sort of, in the spirit of it, I'm slightly cheating, because I'm going to do 2 vinyls, slightly different, and a CD. And this is probably one which a lot of anyone happens to be viewing this probably doesn't know that much. It's not your typical record collector stuff, and I am talking about, you can't really see that, but it is the seminal, and I seriously mean seminal, first album by DJ Shadow called Introducing. And so I bought that back in the day. It was issued in '96. And it was an album, I think it's the first album, which was made up solely of samples from vinyl records. And it really works. It's not, I mean, they call it hip-hop. It's not hip-hop, really. It's, it is the art of the DJ done really, really well. And it's it's in my top, well, I don't know what you call it, 50 or whatever albums. So a few years ago, I came across the vinyl because I thought, well, it's made from vinyl. It ought to be played on it. So, and even the picture on the front is in fact, it goes across, is people rummaging in record shop. And then 2021 even, they did a 25th anniversary reissue of it. So this was remastered back from the original tapes, and it's all sort of half-speed mastered, all done at Abbey Road and so on. So it's not a 45 RPM, so it's not truly, it's not sort of truly a different format in that sense, but it's the nearest I could do, because I don't do cassettes and I'm never going to. So there. Right, next one, number 5. An album that starts and ends with the same letter. That's actually a bit harder than I thought. Anyway, I've come across one, and it's a magnificent album, and it is Tourist by Saint-Germain. So, a great electronic dance album, Rolls Royce, and a tremendous French band. Another one which took me a little while to come to, someone born the same year as you. And I thought this was going to be easy because I was convinced that Weller was the same age as me. Actually, it turns out to be a year younger. I was born in 1957, February 57. One artist I knew was born pretty close to me, early 1957. Was Carl Hyde of Underworld, but I don't have any vinyl of his, so I had to resort to Google to have a look, and I came up with Stephen Morris, was also born, so he's the same age as me, and out of the 2 albums, this is the one I like the cover of most, so I thought I'd bring that one out. Moving rapidly on. This is a double up. Number 7 is most listened to album in 2022, and number 8 is most listened to artist in 2022. And originally I had these separate, and then I twigged that it was specifically saying artist, not band, and it was the only one I could think of. So I'm going to double up here, and it is Isaac Hayes' album Hot Buttered Soul. So I got this Rough Trade exclusive, absolutely fantastic. It's been in my play box the whole year ever since I got it. It isn't, it's not a mo-fi or anything like that, but it is one of the best recorded and pressed records I've got. It's absolutely superb. Not a noise there, it's a fabulous album. I also happened to buy this year Shaft, so I've been listening to quite a lot of Isaac. So next one, Australian artist band. I think this was quite interesting because obviously it's vinyl, so I do have some Tame Impala, for example, but it's on CD or digital. And I have similarly Nick Cave, who's also the same age as me. Actually, I only have one album of his which is on vinyl. I've got loads on CD. I do like old Nick, but it's not one of my favourites. So I thought, no, I'm not going to do that. One I bought not 2022, but late 2021. So it's only just a bit over a year. Is another band associated with Tame Impala from Perth, Western Australia, and it is Pond and their album 9. And if you like all that sort of slight psyche stuff, it's a really good album, definitely worth a listen. We're getting halfway. Number 10, another slight cheat on this one. A record people would be surprised you purchased in 2022. I went through all the sort of like the vinyl I'd thought of, and I thought there's nothing there which I think would surprise people who knew my taste. But I did. Well, I bought a couple of. I bought very few CDs last year, but I did buy one particularly, which anyone who knows my usual taste and certainly record collection would be surprised at, because it's metal. And I don't generally do metal. I don't mind it, but I hankered for a bit of metal last year, and I bought this on CD. It's not something I would have, liked enough to go and spend. You probably can't see what that is, but it's Queensryche, and the album is called Digital Noise Alliance, and I really like it. I mean, it's totally not me, but sometimes, And the next one. An artist stroke band you're complete on. Now, I could have picked sort of a youngish band who've only had 2 or 3 albums, like Black Midi, for example. They've had 3 albums, and I've got all 3 of them on vinyl. But that seems to be an easy one. So a band that's been out for a long time and produced loads and loads of albums. And I'm going for Mogwai here with a slight double cheat. So one is, I'm only talking about the studio albums, because they've also produced shed loads of soundtrack ones, and I don't have any of those on vinyl. I do have quite a lot on digital, but I'm not a great fan of soundtracks, to be honest. So they're sort of nice to haves. Mogwai is a nearly, but it's not far, because they produced 10 studio albums, and I've got 8 of them on vinyl. I don't have the first 2. I haven't really seen them at an affordable price, and I'll come to the caveat on that recently. And that's the first 2: Young Team, which I think is their best album, and Come On Die Young. And a couple of months ago, I happened to see, can't remember how, that they are reissuing those 2 albums. And being released in February. So I've pre-ordered them. So, in another month's time or so, I will definitely be complete. I've certainly got all the albums in CD and lots of double ups on that. Don't have any cassettes of those though. Too many to show. So a great run of 3 albums. Now there are so many I could have chosen here. ELP, Yes, Zeppelin, Wishbone Ash. I mean, there are lots and lots going back. But I thought, no, that's too easy to do, isn't it? So I've come up with Sigur Rós and the 3 early ones. So I generally prefer their early period, if I'm honest, because it's a bit more post-rocky. Don't shout. I know not everyone agrees that they're post-rock, but they are as far as I'm concerned, especially the early stuff. So the one I can't pronounce, I always have to look up, Agatis Brujun. Don't know. I can't pronounce that. My favourite of theirs, the Brackets Untitled, was the one that first got me into them and first got me into post-rock. So, the purists might say, well, they're not consecutive because I had some between. But again, I'm not counting soundtracks here. I'm only counting studio albums. So, and these were consecutive studio albums as far as I am aware. So we're moving through now. Number 13. Initially, I thought I'm going to have to pass on this one. I'll put another question in. And it's 80s soundtracks. Just show one of your favourites. Well, I thought, I haven't got any, because I don't do, your records are all falling down. I'm not really into soundtracks generally, and I'm not really generally into the 80s, so it's a sort of double. And then I thought, hang on, I've bought this year. Blade Runner, Vangelis. Fabulous album. And when we come to this, I could have doubled up here as well. So the number 14 is We Lost Them, excuse me, in 2022. And now, let's face it, there's been a few of those. A lot of them actually I don't have any vinyl of. But obviously Vangelis died last year, so I could have used that. But I've gone for one of my favourites, somebody I've got a real soft spot for, and that's good old Wilco. So Dr. Feelgood, and this one's live album Stupidity, and it's fabulous because if ever there was a live band, it's those. And I did see Wilco. I don't know when it was, about 2005 or 4 or 6 or around the mid 2000s at a biker club in Brom, and it was brilliant. I went with Malcolm Jakes, if Malcolm's watching this. So, next one, number 15, disappointing purchase in 2022. And I think it's got to be this one, because this is one I missed off my my list, because I just couldn't get into it. And it's Kate Le Bon, Pompeii. And, you know, I bought this on the back of lots of good reviews, and I've heard some of her stuff before and quite liked it. And for some reason I didn't stream any of it, and I should have done, because when it came, I mean, I probably ought to try it more, but I've only played it once, and it just bleh. So that's my disappointing album. You found a grail. Well, I didn't, not what you would call a proper grail, but I found a good copy of, at a good price, of an album which most people have got. So it's not like a grail in that sense. It's not rare or anything. But it's long been on my list. It's just one of those sort of perennial things. And I spotted it at a record fair last year. And it is The Who Live at Leeds. So it's the blue one. And I think there's a red and a blue. And this is sort of the I don't know whether it's not necessarily the first, very, very first release, the blue one, but it's the first. It's the same year, if you like. So it's not a sort of reissue or anything like that. And bar the large wall poster, it's got all the. It's in good nick. It's got all the inserts in it, and I think it was about 10 or 15 quid. So that's what I'm going to call it, a grail, even though it's not really. Now this is a fabulous one, and probably I'd be surprised if anyone's heard it. But the question is, space themed album sleeve or song. I'm going for the song on this one, though. The sleeve is sort of going there, and the album. See, that is Black Mountain is the band. They're from Vancouver. And the album is it's called 4, and the last track on it is Space to Bakersfield. Now this is I probably, if there's a single track which I probably play every week without fail, and sometimes every day without fail, it's this. And usually, even though I've got this, there is an absolutely epic YouTube video of them, really high def, of them playing live at the, what's it called, KEXP, is it? You know, the Seattle radio where they do lots of these. So I think this album came out in about 2016, so it's about 5 or 6 years old, 6, 7 years old now. Time's flying. So I think this was from when it was released. It's sort of bonkers psych. It's one of those tracks which I would call having what I would call a wonky wah-wah pedal. But it's got great, if you like, long. It's about 10 or 11 minutes long. But live, it is fabulous. And the guitarist, who, it's a proper, he really looks like an old hippie. Middle-aged hippie, should we say. He's younger than me. And it's just, it's just wigging out on that guitar with the wah-wah pedal. I will post a link to that because, if you like that sort of, wig out guitar, and I know a few do, it's definitely one to watch. So I hope Alan doesn't mind if I put the link on there. Now here's one. This is my change. So I've swapped one question, which I couldn't really do, with what I thought was a much more interesting question that Dylan Noble Records did on his vinyl tag one, and it's basically the original was show an album that was a present, and I didn't have any, I haven't got any. Dylan's one was a record with a story, like a personal story, which was, and his was, I thought was quite interesting. And this is one I sort of posted about before, but not really talked about, and it's very meaningful for me. So I hope I can say this without blubbing. And the album is Atomic Rooster, Death Walks Behind You. So this album I've had since since my early mid teens, early 70s, but I never bought it, and I could never quite work out where I got it from. And over the years, I sort of assumed that I thought it was maybe I borrowed it from a kid down the road whose elder brother I knew had this album, and somehow I didn't give it back. And around the same time, I lost my original copy of Toll's Aqualung. I bought another one because it gone, and again over the years I thought, I must have lent it to somebody and not got it. So wind forward from the early 70s, 30 odd years to 20 years ago, almost exactly 20 years ago. So a couple of days before New Year in 2002, I met my wife, Marion. Marion, actually, I met her through my sister because they were best friends at school going back. And after only a few days, we were both into music, into the same sort of music, so we hit it off pretty well straight away. We were going through records, and she said, "That's my Atomic Rooster, Death Walks Behind You." I lost that. Anyway, we worked it out. My sister, for some reason, decided she'd swap Atomic Rooster and Aqualung. So she got my original Aqualung from 30 years before, now 50 years, and I got her Death Walks Behind Me. So it's a real important record. It's one of the ones which is most meaningful to me, shall we say. So we're down to the last one now, and I could this one I could have used a Leonard Skinner, and it's an album released in 1973, and there are endless of them. So 1973, it's my 16th birthday early in that, so it's right, absolute bang in the midst of my buying music and from Saturday jobs and pocket money and stuff like that, and then over the years, but it is smack bang in my period of stuff I like. So it would be easy to pick one of those, but not very too easy. So actually, I'm choosing an album from '73, which I from a style and a band I wasn't into at the time, an album I'd never even heard of until last year, and I picked it quite at random, rummaging through a second-hand record store in Reading, and I can't remember. It was about £8 or something like that. It wasn't very expensive, and I love it. And it is the Allman Brothers Band, Brothers and Sisters. So that's my 1973. And that's the last question. So I found it quite interesting, just picking through and looking for stuff and trying to find the right one. So I hope that was interesting, and it's one anyone can do. So it'd be quite interesting to see if anyone else wants to do one of these on the channel. So thanks a lot. See you again.